Volunteers from Commando Courageous, a Boer's Diary by Roland William Schikkerling. It is useless to linger on the dilatory methods of General Boer and of the other older officers. Through their excessive caution and inability to adapt themselves speedily enough to the new conditions, and to take advantage of the splendid opportunities which the first days of the war in Natal offered, as well as through their contempt for the advice of younger, brisker men, they contributed to our failure. The men, who could hardly be held in check, were not allowed to follow up our first victories by dashing into the enemy's territory, which was very inadequately guarded, and gathering up sympathizers there while they were on fire. Our particular case required men alert, impetuous, and capable of endurance. The older officers were a drag on our skipping spirits. Many leaders, like Cronje, though wise in their generation, were unfitted to the changed conditions and had an unqualified contempt for the enemy. Always a great mistake, which they nursed and magnified until they could not be shaken in their conviction. At the outset, the Boer national spirit was weak and uncertain. Even the initial successes, which were due mainly to the feebleness and blundering of the enemy, did little or nothing to improve that spirit. It was only in the hour of adversity and reverse that our sterner stuff showed itself, and a new and determined attitude was born. But, alas, full national consciousness awoke only after our numbers were greatly reduced, and when the odds, almost paralyzing from the beginning, had become overwhelming. The Boers did not appreciate their own temerity when, in 1880, they declared war against England. By all the rules of probability, and even those of incalculable chance, they should not have succeeded. But that Danton-like audacity, commended in the saying, "Fortune favours the brave," carried them through. Had we not thus at the commencement been handicapped by cautious leaders, we might have drawn rein simultaneously with a retreating enemy at the salt water's edge. When Ladysmith lay in thrall, we made merry in the hills around, and held up many good men who could have gone forward to argue with a scared and retreating enemy. Shortly after our unsuccessful storming of the Platrand, overlooking Ladysmith, on the 6th of January 1900, I was granted a week's leave to visit Johannesburg. When I returned to the Natal front, our men had fallen back from the Tugela and were occupying the hills around Glencoe, Van Tonder's Neck, and Helpmekaar. The body I sought, the Johannesburg Commando, was guarding Van Tonder's Neck in the Biggersberg, about 3 hours' journey on horseback from Dundee, and to the west of Helpmekaar Pass. Having decided to wage war more comfortably on my return, I took with me a Hottentot servant, whom I had for the mere asking and without payment. I had to use him gently, however, for he was old. He had been through several wars with Sir Harry Smith, and many were the grim tales he could tell. At every station on our way, A crowd collected about him to listen to the stories, songs and jokes with which he brimmed over. Hottentots are famed for their humour, and Sergeant Patlanks, as he called himself, became little more than my jester. Patlanks means along the path, that is, the path of rectitude. He would have sold his soul for liquor. On arriving at the Commando, I joined my old messmates, Jack and Sidney Rocher, their father, Wim John, Wilson, Best and Brink, who with some dozen others were under a corporal named Tom Lessing. Everything seemed so peaceful that I could hardly believe that war was still waging. We had little more to do than twice a week guard the pass 2 miles away for a night and visit the adjoining farms. A few miles in front of our position was a beautiful farm, which we visited with a wagon, bringing away thousands of oranges. The war was now proceeding languidly in Natal, and many commandos had left for the Free State, whither the Commandant General Louis Botha had already gone, and where, it seemed, much fighting was to be done. A young person in the ranks, whom we had taken to be a youth, was now revealed to be a girl, and had to be sent back to Johannesburg. At this time, many of our men were continually crying for verlof, or leave of absence. From verlof, the English word furlough is derived. To verlof, much of our misfortune may be traced. Many took French leave and went home or to other commandos more to their liking. If a man's sense of honour did not cause him to behave, no regulations could, for it is very difficult to punish or even threaten with punishment a man who comes on his own account and who receives no pay, or for an elected officer to punish men by whose grace he holds his position. Few men were pressed to enter a fight, and everything was done by volunteers.